Howdy, I am back on the couch again. That means I've got another video for our Peaks Challenge Falls Creek 2020. So this one's video number 3, and this one's all about the Christmas period. And what I want to try and run through in this video is how to tackle essentially this holiday period where you may not necessarily have your normal routine of training. We are currently in our second block of training. We've done our base phase, had our recovery week. We're now in the build block, which has essentially a bit more volume and hopefully lots of hills. So look, typically what I see with athletes is that the Christmas period can be all over the shop. It's actually hard for me to program because people either are not at work and they're on holidays, they could be away with family and not even have a bike. Others have got lots of time on their hands to ride a bike and that's what they want to do. So I guess I've got 2 main areas to focus on in this video to try and give you a few tips. The first one is, in this block of training, do as much as you can. If you've got more time on your hands because you're not at work, if we've only got 12 hours in for the week, feel free to do more. If you've got Boxing Day where the family does nothing and you're free to go ride a bike, try and get a bigger ride in. Doesn't have to be hard, just try and get those endurance kilometers in. Anything extra we do on top of the training program, of the prescribed program, is essentially going to just be longer aerobic climbing or just flat riding depending upon where you are. A good thing to focus on in this Christmas through to New Year block is something like the Strava Festive 500. That's a great one. Look, if Festive 500 isn't that much of a big target for you, then try and bump it up, make it 750. In the past I've aimed for 1,000. That makes a pretty hard week of riding if you're trying to space out 1,000 kilometers in a week. Conversely to that, if you're away on holidays with the family or something like that and you haven't got the okay to take your bike with you, then don't stress. Look, if you're away for a week and you've got a week off the bike, don't do anything crazy like decide to take up running if you're not used to running, because you'll end up just hurting yourself, I'd say. I'd say try and be physically active where you can, but if you haven't got the bike with you, don't dismay too much. You're not going to digress too far. A week, 2 weeks especially, is a long period of time to sort of be off the bike, but you will hang on to some of the stuff that you've done. In that sense, try and do things like swimming, so low impact stuff like swimming, walking's fine, hiking's fine, but if you're not used to running and things like that, I would generally say try and avoid it because you will end up pulling up quite sore and potentially injuring yourself. So within this training block, we have the main sessions on the weekends are our climbing repeats. So I think we start off with 40, then 60, then 80 minutes total of climbing. The idea of those is to challenge yourself. If the first one that's 40 minutes total climbing is something that you do regularly on a weekend out going up and down a hill, then potentially aim for a little bit more. Maybe it would be 60 minutes as opposed to 40. And again, if it's a 60-minute one and that's fine, maybe try and do 80. And then when you get to that big week, challenge yourself and see how many you can actually do. They shouldn't be that hard. They're sort of 80 to 90% intensity. For myself, if I was going to challenge myself, it might be a 20-minute effort at about 80%, and I might try and get through 4 to 6 of them. And essentially I'd pull the pin on the effort where I can no longer really maintain the power that I have been going in the previous efforts. Another big thing about this period, especially here in Australia, is the weather conditions. It is a hot day right now here in Victoria as I film this. Look, be safe out there. If I've got a 5-hour ride in and it's a 40-degree day, I'd really think about ways to try and potentially move that ride to another day, or ways of getting up super early and being able to try and beat the heat. Just because it says 5 hours doesn't mean you have to get 5 hours done if it means you're going to come home a dribbling mess and potentially in a bad state when you get back. I know here in Australia we've actually got a few problems with bushfires and smoke and things like that. I've got a few athletes up in Sydney who are struggling to even get outside right now because there's so much smoke in the air. So look, health first, please. Don't go too crazy and think you've got to go out and ride through either dangerous conditions or conditions that are going to result in you not feeling so good the next day. The next point, I guess, is trying to keep in control with your food intake and your alcohol intake. Look, it is Christmas and the festive season. I think you're crazy if you're going to say no to having a drink and no to a nice big Christmas lunch. Look, it's not going to hurt. If you're riding more, then yes, you're going to have lots of free calories to try and cover. But if you are trying to get that weight down slowly as we get closer to the event, then just don't go crazy and stick your hand in the pretzel bowl too many times, but enjoy the good stuff that you wouldn't normally have, and just be mindful that you are generally, when you align good training and a good approach to eating, things tend to come together. If you let one or the other loose, then you tend to go, stuff it, I'm just gonna go crazy at the moment. But so try and have a little bit of self-control, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I always say that and end up eating a bit more than I should, but that's perfectly fine this time of year. Last up is all the Bicycle Network training rides for Three Peaks. I'll put them up now so you can see them. So before Christmas, there's a few around Victoria. We have a Mount Macedon ride on the Saturday. There's a Dandenongs Mini Three Peaks ride on the Sunday. They're getting to a decent distance. That Sunday ride's 127 kilometres and will have a fair bit of climbing in it. You'll be able to challenge yourself and hopefully you've got some good legs around this time. We've got some rides up in Sydney, I'm pretty sure it is, around New South Wales. We've got a West Head ride, 22nd of December. And then there's a bit of a break before we get to January where we kick off again. Later in the months, you'll see there is a couple of blue sock rides. Those ones I'm going to do my best to try and get along to. James G and myself are going to ride lead those, and we're going to replicate the training session for that day. It's essentially going to be repeats up and down a hill. That's about it, folks. I hope you have a good festive season, a good Chrissy. I hope you get something new and shiny for your bike. Be safe out there. Weather conditions, lots of traffic on the roads. Just be cautious. Get that training done. Remember, if you can do more than what's in there, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you balance it with a recovery in there somewhere. Okay, I hope you ride safe and I will speak to you next time. Bye.